Yo, what's up, everyone? It's your boy, Jack Oates, the GOAT. You either know or you don't. So, as promised from the last video, I said I'd talk about one of these theories stemming off of Alan's name. And before I do, I want to say thanks for tuning in and blah, blah, blah. So, I wanted to quickly go over Xenon's name really quick before I get into the theory, because like I said in the last video, there's some implications to Xenon's name that seem to be rather important, and we know Tabata, sometimes with names, seems to be pretty telling of what a character's capacity in the story would be, such as Licht, Noct, Morgan, Yami, names like that. So I take names very seriously when Tabata relays these things. So when we look at Xenon's name, it means a multitude of things, but when you look at the Greek terms, namely, Xenon is then transformed into Zeno. They're both pretty interchangeable, and this goes as a moniker for Zeus, as I said in the last video. Now, one other thing that it does convey in the Greek language is that it's a definition for stranger, but it can also be meant as an enemy stranger, or guest friend. So it goes along the rules of Greek hospitality, which is interesting because if you recall the accounts of gods in Greek mythology coming down to intermingle with humans, whether that be as friends, war companions, or just straight up, what do you fuck buddies, whatever. They take form into something else, and a lot of times that's not another human. Sometimes it's a different animal, and you can kind of look at like how Sekre goes from human to bird, right? That type of thing is what they would do. And the idea behind the Zeno philosophy, though, is that they treat strangers as friends, and it's almost a self-preservation sort of thing. It's not because they are necessarily nice people. It's because gods were known to come down in disguise. So, being that gods don't live on Earth, they usually don't have homes. So gods would end up trying to come into a stranger's home for, a bed for the night and whatnot. And people would let strangers in because they would be more or less afraid that, what if this is a god in disguise and I say no, then they might punish me. But if I say yes, they might reward me with something. So this was like a give and take relationship, and just in case God is watching, kind of like if you're at work and every job has a camera that films its employees in certain areas, right? So it's like, if you want to take something from the back room, it's like, okay, there's cameras watching, so I'll actually organize it instead, and they might see me on camera and give me a raise or a promotion, instead of me stealing and me getting potentially fired if they go back in the cameras and see that. So that's kind of what the idea is, which I thought was really interesting. Now, if we take what Xenon has done with this, in this story, I think it becomes a little more fleshed out, because the very first account Xenon has, big thing on his record is killing his best friend Alan during that mission. Now, that is one of the bigger moments in his life, and it affected him so profoundly that he turned to devils. Now, you can take this as a kind of punishment, if you will, and if you've been watching the other videos I put out before I kind of dropped off here, I do totally believe that Alan, and potentially Xenon as well, looking at the grimoires, are the four-leaf version for the Spade Kingdom. Of course, spades won't have leaves like clovers do, but you see on Alan's grimoire, he's got a four-pointed cross, and that can mean many things, not necessarily a four-leaf spade grimoire, but that does still hold a lot of importance, as I've detailed in other videos about Alan as well. So to move on from that, Xenon faces this huge backlash to himself as a character, and it shifted him and changed him greatly. Now, fast forward to when Xenon, Dante, and Vonica staged the coup against Lois and Ciel. Xenon was the one who goes after Yuno, and this is something I pointed out on many occasions. Xenon let Yuno go. Xenon let him survive. And I don't say that as like he completely protected Yuno, because he didn't. He still sent disciples after them. But considering Xenon's devil's magic, Beelzebub, he could have just yami'd him, showed up right in the portal right next to Ralph's father, and ganked Ralph's father and yoinked Yuno and killed them. But he didn't, and we have to wonder why. And if we take this Xeno philosophy, we take what Yuno represented for the Spade Kingdom, which is definitely like a savior, like we had been predicting for a while. He was the joining of sun and moon to create this star child, who seems to be broken to all hell right now. So taking this Xeno philosophy and extending it to Yuno, to where everyone in the Spade knew that Yuno was going to be important somehow, some way. Xenon lets him survive, and this in turn could potentially bless him with a second chance. Now, there's many theories on the channel about Yuno and or Asta reflecting like Jesus in the story, and Wizard King Minato actually did a really fantastic job detailing Yuno's new magic and what it means as far as the symbolism goes, because it does represent the Arma Christi, which is the array of weapons and devices used to sacrifice or crucify Jesus Christ, and some events that happened during that as well. So Yuno more and more is reflecting this this Christ-like being as we move into the climax of this arc. Now, we see that him and Yuno kind of connected towards the end. I don't want to say they became friends, but I think they understood each other on a fundamental level. And from that fundamental level, their structures themselves, as ethics and morals go, were complete opposites. And the fact that Yuno won out meant that his foundation was not only stronger, but the options that he made were more superior to Xenon's. So Xenon loses that battle, meaning Yuno, again, is the superior one. So if Yuno somehow gets this power to, somehow maybe bestow a second chance upon someone, Xenon might be a runner-up, given the Xeno philosophy of treating a stranger as a god in disguise, because you never know when and if you can be rewarded for your good deeds. Now, I already made a Yuno Star Magic video talking about how souls correlate with it as well. So I don't think like some type of revival is out of the question. It's just how and the circumstances, and I honestly doubt it would go that far, but I do like where it leads. So now let's get into the actual theory. I'm going to try and make this very short because I spent a lot of time on that. So I did, by the end of that the last video, describe as Alan's last name, Fiorain, as the son of Odin, because you have son of and rain, and the god of rain is Odin. So son of rain brought this whole mess of ideas into my head, because when I correlate it to Odin, we have to understand that Odin is the leader of the Wild Hunt. Now, this is if you think what I say is convoluted, like my theories, the Wild Hunt is probably one of the most convoluted stories I've ever come across, because it makes sense and then it makes no sense, and they give zero reason as to why it makes no sense, because it stems from these a hunting party, a mystical hunting party made up of elves, fairies, ghosts, and dogs, and all that stuff. And they even have Santa Claus in it. Krampus is in it. The devil is in it. Like it's so crazy. And then it just goes from like they have this purpose of like collecting souls, like whether they're from undeserving to deserving, and then everything in between, which means that they just hunt and kill everything in their way. And then when it comes to like, you know, the more ancient aspects, like as you go further back in time, it just says they go around fighting each other, everything in their path, for no reason whatsoever. And it's just wild. So they call it the Wild Hunt. And the reason why I brought up the Wild Hunt specifically is because Fia is also meant to mean deer, but wild deer. And they make it a point to say that this form of wild doesn't mean that this deer is a non-captive deer, but it's a primitive wild. So they don't really go into depth as to explain like what primitive wild means, but I can definitely assume that it does pertain to something like the Wild Hunt. Now, the leaders of the Wild Hunt change between regions, so you do have Odin leading this. Now, remember that I like to cross-reference a lot of the lore that I look up, and we do have Thomas Carlson's book on the Qliphoth, and also The Dark Side of the Runes, and he places Odin at the very bottom as the supreme devil, which fits here because Odin, if he's not the leader in another region, the leader of this is the devil himself. So that makes it very interesting. But then also, in some accounts, you have Cain and Gabriel as the leaders, and I believe they also even have Jesus, but that one is not so popular, so I wouldn't really talk about that here. But I say that to say this. We have the story of Alan and Xenon, and Xenon kills Alan, who would be, in this case, the son of Odin, and then you have Xenon as Zeus, or, treating this, now a stranger, just in case he's a god. And not to say that he thinks Juno's a god, but I think he let him go on purpose, for sure. He kills this Alan, so you have this Zeus, and then you have Son of Odin, and Son of Odin is actually Thor, of course, and he's also got other sons, but Thor is the most notable one, of course, and to equate Thor to another being on the Greek side, the thing is that it's kind of interchangeable, but the thing is that when you take attributes and how they operate, Thor and Zeus are connected entirely. Now, as far as how they work and their placement in the hierarchy in gods, Zeus is more correlated with Odin, but their traits do not match. So they tend to equate Thor with Zeus when you come into like how they act, when they act, and all that good stuff. So it's just interesting to me how we have Zeus and Odin here, and then Zeus ends up killing this son of Odin, and then you have Asta and Juno, who would be this parallel. And to me, it seems like if we take the Wild Hunt theory, that the Wild Hunt has been going through time and trying to get something right. So like I said, it's very hard for me to explain the Wild Hunt. It's probably better if you just look it up, to be honest, and see for yourself how crazy it is. But it seems like they're going for some kind of goal, and it's not working because you have these beings that are parallels of each other, not exactly coming out the way they should. So whatever this plan is didn't work for Xenon and Alan because Xenon kills Alan, and then with Asta and Juno, it seems to not work either, just because Asta has no magic and Juno has this influx of magic for I was going to say little to no reason, but there's actually a lot of evidence to give why he has this large influx of magic and how it's going to stab him in the back in just a few chapters here. But that's kind of the theory, that I think we're getting this Wild Hunt-ish theme that's happening, and we're kind of seeing this with Lucifero popping out, and I'm going to talk about him as well. And with Austin Yuno on the field, having defeated Xenon just recently, with all the captains on the field, you have literally every element, just short of Ghost Dogs, in this fight right now. And it seems like this is the route we're going. But you never know with Tabata. He's taken some shifts and turns, and I'm sure he's about to take one pretty soon here. But anyway, that's the theory. That went on way too long, and I apologize. Anyway, it's been Jago. Let's go. You either know or you don't.